Hey folks, so you're very welcome to myself and Jonathan's talk. Today we're going to talk about the third stream, and really what this thing is patterns for elevating outcome-driven product development. So we talk a lot about moving from outputs towards a more outcome focus, but what does that mean in practice? And what are some of the concrete patterns around that? So that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to share some of our ideas around that. So really looking forward to it. So yeah, first of all, a little bit about me. David Denham is my name. I currently work as an agile coach in Workday. Been in software development about 20 years or so. So worked in UX and agile over the past few years. And yeah, I'm delighted. I'm obviously an active member of this community, and delighted. Thanks very much for joining our talk. And I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dionatan Moura. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm an Agile coach since 2013, and it's a pleasure to be here talking about the third stream and a new concept, a new idea. We are not creating anything. We are just like merging ideas, and let's see how it will be our experiment.
Perfect. And we like pizza as well, as you can see
Yeah,
there.
we do, and
Not
Coke.
Hawaiian pizza though, right? Yeah,
Margarita
so
pizza is fine.
yeah, margarita's fine. So we used to work together, just to give you a bit more background, a few years ago. So Jonathan is based in Brazil. I'm based in Ireland at the moment. But we stayed connected over the years, and particularly over the last couple of years, we've been talking about this, some of these ideas that we're going to share with you today. So really looking forward to that. Yeah, so a little bit about our agenda for today. We're going to introduce what this idea of the third stream is. We're going to talk about some of the principles behind it, and we're going to talk about some anti-patterns we've observed and some patterns, or think of them almost as hacks, that we would suggest that you potentially try out. Okay, so let's go back in time, and hopefully you guys are familiar with Back to the Future, the movie Back to the Future. I think I actually only introduced it to Jonathan fairly recently. I know Jonathan rewatched it recently anyway, so I think you're a fan, right?
I do recommend it to
Yeah,
rewatch the movie.
definitely. It's a classic. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in our DeLorean, like Doc and Marty, and go back to 1995. And what are we going to find in 1995? So something pretty scary, actually, at least pre 1995. So we're talking about software development and product development in particular. The idea of these kind of lightweight agile methods only really came along in this time. So Scrum and XP in particular, and before that, to build products, there was this thing called waterfall. So really a sequential, traditional project management way of managing product development. But given the complexity of product development, it frequently led to lots of overruns, not building the right thing. The idea of teams as well didn't really exist. There was working project groups and handovers and lots of documentation and things like that. So it was a pretty scary time in general, right? Like I think I like the image here. This is kind of what it was like to
Yeah,
build a
that's
product.
true. The feeling was like a T-Rex was eating software development. So yeah, that was the first wave we identify. Like it's a kind of wave, uh, like old times of agile. We were struggling to fight against documentation and projects based development, and now we have the second wave, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, so the second wave. So really, we're talking about, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with a lot of these concepts of lean startup, Eric Ries, 2010, lean UX, Jeff Gotthelf, Josh Scheiden, design sprints, all of these lightweight product discovery methods. So product discovery was always there, But really, some of these lean approaches came along, and I kind of think of this as the second wave when really kind of more lean approaches and design thinking approaches came into play. So, we figured out with things like Scrum and XP, we talked about before, ways to deliver smaller batches, incrementally get feedback. But now we're talking about it going a bit more upstream and validating, right? That because ultimately, the quicker we can get some early feedback without even building anything, ultimately that's going to help our products, right? So really, yeah, that's when these type of methods came along.
Yeah, we can say like this is the time to think about the user needs. So the last maybe 10 years, around 10 years, we are thinking about the user needs. So the discovery thing, as David said, the upstream.
Yeah, exactly. We've kind of moved out of the Wild West as well to bring it back to the future as well. We've moved out of the past of waterfall, big upfront planning, things like that, right? So, yeah, but one thing we've observed, so we've really got better at delivering, better at discovering, and myself and Jonathan talk about this quite a bit. And there still seems to be a paradox, right? So we're delivering better, we're discovering better, but just like in the movie when young Jennifer met old Jennifer in an alternate universe, there's still a focus on outputs. We talk a lot about how do we become more results driven, impact driven, outcome driven, and we say we want to move in that direction, but there's still a focus on some of those success measures from old school waterfall development. Did we ship on time? Success being shipped, and it doesn't quite relate or tie in with some of the developments that have happened. So really, we're talking about what does success look like? How do we measure success? How do we learn about it? And what do we do about it, right? And I know John Cutler, who's going to be speaking later on today. He talked about this idea of a feature factory, and I know Melissa Perry talks about the idea of a build trap. And we really see there's still a kind of a Tayloristic culture there, and underlying a lot of product developments that we discover, we build, we ship, and shipping equals success. Shipping on time equals success. And we have a party, but the parties just happen more frequently, right? So in waterfall, we might wait 2 years to have the party, but now we're waiting 2 weeks to have the party. And we like a good party, I think, Jonathan. But ultimately, what are we celebrating? That's what's success, and it's just something we've seen, right?
Yeah, that's true. Everything is still hypothesis here. We just validate what we think, what we thought in the discovery, in the upstream. We can just validate, not just shipping it, but when the end user is really using the feature, the services of our product. So something is missing.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, it's not just about being efficient in discovery, efficient in delivery, but also, what's that missing step that we just don't get into that feature factory. And yeah, I mean, we're trying to visualize this on a Kanban board, just on a very simple level. So, imagine we're taking our problem space or epic across the board. We've discovered, we've delivered. But really, instead of done, we want to really challenge that notion that, it's not done. And really what we've done is we've shipped with quality. So we're talking about the definition of done. Really what that means for an increment is we ship the increment with, or we potentially ship the increment with quality, which is great. But from a product success point of view, it doesn't mean that the product is done. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Jonathan will talk a little bit about that later. Yeah, so I think Jonathan alluded to this, the missing link, right? I think you talked about that earlier. This idea of how we discover and how we deliver has improved massively over the last few years. But really, what we're talking about is going back to the future here. We see this as a third wave, right? So we talked about the two earlier waves. And other people talk about this, love the escaping the feature factory, love outcomes over output, Josh Seiden. there's others talking about this. So, some of these patterns, we don't claim to be inventing them, but really we think that there's a third wave. We're calling it the third stream. And it's really a missing link in terms of what do we do after shift? What happens after shift, right? Yeah, so really, this is kind of how we see it. So, we talk a lot about the first two loops. The first stream we're talking about discovery. Sometimes we call it upstream, and the second stream we're talking about delivery. Sometimes we call that downstream. But we see the missing link is the third stream. So really connecting those loops together, and it's not linear. So as you can see, this is not a standard value stream map. This is not linear. This is a recurring feedback loop. And within that, there's 3 steps we'll talk about: measuring, learning, and acting. So we're not saying the third stream is a replacement for what happens before us. We're not saying it's better. We're just saying, hey, there's some patterns there that help connect the loop back into discovery and delivery. So this is what we're proposing to be the third stream.
Yeah, that's what we realized in our breakfast conversation since 5 years ago, right, David?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There is still something missing in most of companies and organizations about not just about the feature factor, but most of it. That missing link. We are discovering the product, the services, we are delivering and shipping it, but not every agile product development is thinking of results, carrying the third stream. So we call it third stream because we have the first stream, which is usually the upstream or discovery. The second stream is the development, coding, or if it's a digital product or not. But these 3 streams, they serve for every product development, not just digital or software, So we try to be more product-based development. So what is that missing link, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so pass over to Jonathan now to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we try to organize and divide the third stream in 3 steps and 6 principles. So we will be showing now you what are the 3 steps. You can change it, please, David. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we inside the third stream, it's not linear. It is linear, these 3 loops, if you stretch it, if you open that 3 loops, it's just one big loop, but it's not linear, Next slide, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe just to add, I think product development sure. by its nature, it's messy. I know we have John Cutler speaking later. He talks a lot about he calls it the beautiful mess. So yeah, it's absolutely not linear. And this is our attempt to help visualize that.
So the third stream, that last loop, we have 3 steps: the measure, the first one, learn, and act. So first we need the data and information to learn. So through metrics, being data-driven, we can learn something. And we can discover something from the results, from the end users, from the market, from the product being used. And we can't just learn about the product. We have to act about that information, about that learning. So that are the 3 steps. They must be quite simple for you to understand, because if you act, you can't act just from your experience. You can be very wrong, having just hypothesis. You have to learn, and the best way to learn is being data driven. So measuring, having metrics, so that are the 3 steps. So when something happens, it's always U3. So that 3 steps, we need them, to act. We have to learn something, and to learn, we need data. We must be data driven. not just belief driven.
Yeah, absolutely. But the best things always seem to happen in threes. But yeah, I think as well we try to make it as simple as possible, really.
And we have the 6 principles. They must be quite simple as well, just to guide our third stream. So the first one is value. Being value driven is not just for the user, but for the business as well. So we have to balance and think of these two kinds of value, business and user value. Okay. So the second principle, as we said before, it's not linear. It's not something from project development. It's not linear because we can have many feedback loops inside our 3 streams, the first stream, the second, and the third one. So it's not linear, okay? As I said, like that 3 loops, if you will open that, it will be just one loop and it seems linear, but it's not linear, That's just one model to understand the 3 streams, but it's not linear. There are many feedback loops about that. And the third principle is like we have to think about the development, mainly in the second stream. We can't just think of like delivering. We must think of the development. So delivery means when shipping a feature like a project that ends and we take something next to do. And we have to think different than a project. We are developing the product, we are not just shipping. So the teams, think of the teams, turn your delivery teams into development teams, So that teams, they will develop the product. They won't just ship, The product developers, they will develop the product, not just ship it, not just delivering it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's a name, just a name, but it means everything. So don't call your teams like delivery teams. Try to call your teams development teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a beautiful DeLorean being made there up in Northern Ireland, I believe. But absolutely, I think, regardless of your job title, whether you're an engineer, a designer, a copywriter, you're part of this development team who are doing discovery and delivery and validating your learning all in the same team. So that's a really important distinction.
And the idea of the fourth principle is like shifting the developers, the product developers, left and right. What does it mean? Like left going to the first stream. This is what we are bringing to the agile organizations from 10 years ago to now. Bringing the teams, the developers to the discovery, so they are working on the product discovery as well. But now we are asking to shift the developers right as well, which means the developers, the product developers, which means the team, the product team, they will think of the results as well, which means right going to the third stream. The fifth principle is done is never done forever. As you must understand, when you ship a feature, you can consider it done. It's done for shipping it, but it's not done for the market, for the user. The market is changing. Maybe in a few weeks or few months or next year, that need changed. So it's not done, Like the product life cycle, you have to think of the features on and which time is your product. If you are introducing to the market, if you are growing it, if it's mature, it can be declined. So and you can extend your product. So done is never done forever for a product. Done is something very project thinking, uh, never is never done. Done is never done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is very different from a project life cycle. So with products, generally they're never done, until they reach maybe their end of life. And it's interesting with those different parts of the life cycle. You might be doing slightly different activities there as well. So you have to be very mindful of that.
And the last principle is validated learning is useless without taking action from it. Because learning, okay, of course, you have to learn from metrics, from the product, from the end user, using the product, your services. But it's not just about learning. You have to act from learning. You have to do something if it's needed. You have to improve your product because it's a product. It's alive. It's organic. It's not just a project, you know. So you have to do something. Now it's you, David.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so we're going to talk about some anti-patterns that we've observed, and also some patterns we would suggest to experiment with as well, as we try to move more towards this third stream of measuring, learning, and acting, and build that into our product development flow. Okay, so I'm just going to share the first anti-pattern with you. We call this "I feel good." I don't know if anyone is a fan of James Brown, but really what we're talking about is vanity metrics, right? So, and a typical vanity metric might be, something like hits on a homepage, right? And what does a vanity metric mean? Eric Ries, who wrote the Lean Startup, talks about it as those type of metrics, which probably do make you feel good and warm inside, but they're probably not too actionable in terms of the outcomes that we're looking for. I really like Josh Scheiden's description of outcomes. That kind of measure of change in human behavior that causes business results, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about outcomes. So one pattern we'd recommend to avoid, vanity metrics is think about leading and lagging indicators. So a lagging indicator is generally a higher level business impact metric, which is probably a bit further away. So it could be a quarter, could be 6 months, could be a year away. And a simple example there: increased bookings by 12% by the end of Q2. If you're building a shopping cart, new page, it might be difficult to connect that straight back to that lagging indicator. So starting off with the far away lagging impact metric, and kind of working back from there towards a leading indicator. So the leading indicator, will be a shorter term metric. So, for example, decreased drop off rate between cart and billing page by 5% in 2 weeks. And really, the key thing we call it out there is, right, so you're measuring a change in user behavior, so that's your outcome, but also 2 weeks. So to time box it to about 1 to 2 weeks. So about the standard size of a sprint, because that's what will show you your trend then over time. It means that every 2 weeks, during your review, if you're using Scrum, you can check back in and say, how have we trended? What have we learned? Versus last time in terms of our indicator. So we're connecting back a leading indicator to a lagging indicator there. Okay, so second anti-pattern is zombie OKRs, we like to call these. So what are these? So maybe you've seen this, or maybe you know a friend who's experienced this, but if your company are using OKRs, which is a great goal setting framework, objectives and key results. So maybe you're setting them every quarter, and you're setting outcome focused key results. But maybe there's a big rush towards the end of the quarter then, to see, did we meet them, or even to see what can we measure very quickly. And we like to think these are zombie OKRs because they kind of raise from the dead towards the end of the quarter and come back to bite you. So the pattern we'd suggest to mitigate that is bi-weekly OKR reviews. So bi-weekly or even weekly if you can, but very regular OKR reviews. And we would suggest asking yourself 3 questions in there. How are key results trending? So we're looking at the measure part. What have we learned? So we're looking at the learn part, and what action do we need to take next? So this is the most important part, actually, and it's the one people often forget. So we've measured, we've learned, maybe we've celebrated, but we need to see, what do we need to do next? What will we do with that learning? Maybe we're going to pivot in a different direction, or maybe we're just going to share out the learnings, and that's fine as well. So we recommend bi-weekly OKR reviews. Okay, so next pattern I'm going to talk about, we call this Mystic Meg product discovery. So maybe you've been in a situation where you've tested some prototypes, in terms of, let's say, a new landing page, and it tested really well with your users. You put them through the lab, or you've used something like usertesting.com, something like that, gotten really good feedback, and then you've built it. But then you ship it and you realize that the behavior of the actual live users is different from what's being prototyped and what's being tested earlier on in the first stream. So in the third stream, we're seeing some different user behavior versus the first stream. So it's really important to bear in mind that it's not until it's in users' actual hands, in the market's hands, and that we're going to see the real results of what's actually happening. So one suggestion we would offer is to use A/B testing. So many of you guys might be familiar with A/B testing, but really, once you're in that shipped stage, to consider shipping it to a smaller cohort initially. So it's something like 5% of your traffic, or a statistically significant amount of your traffic. And something like feature toggles can help with that as well. So you're going to do an A/B split test, and to validate in real production live environment, does the expected outcome happen or play out the way that you expect? And you're going to start measuring that before you actually full scale it. So it's really important. Although, first stream product discovery is super, super vital. Think about how you'll approach that once you're in the third stream. So something like A/B testing is a nice way to do that. Okay, so I'm going to hand back to Jonathan.
And another anti-pattern is like, do you recommend it? It's all about NPS, about the detractors and promoters. This is just one hypothesis. It's one metric. You can't learn so much about it. So imagine if your NPS it's like 95%. What does it mean? You can't learn from that. It's just a number, and it's very subjective number. You can't like it's 7 for me, maybe 9, maybe can be 9 for David. We don't know. Like sometimes if I eat a very good pizza, I can say it's 10 or 9 or 7. It's very personal score. And what we suggest is having the fitness for purpose score. This is from something from Kanban Road. So you have 3 questions. It's much better having, I know the 3 questions, it's not everyone who we will want to share some information through 3 questions. It will be less, you have less answers, okay? But it's much better to learn. It's much better like having 100 users answer this fitness for purpose than 1 million from NPS. Because NPS say almost nothing about your service, your product. So first of all, we bring the goal. What's your purpose? The end user, the client purpose here, And the second is the quantitative number. So you ask like, how much of your goal is being achieved? So extremely, highly, mostly, partially, slightly, or not at all. And why? Why is it achieved or not your goal? So you can learn much, much more with fitness for purpose score than NPS. And the next pattern is like Santa delivers on December 26th. It's almost Christmas, right, Dave?
Yeah, it
Christmas
is.
is coming.
Yeah, my two daughters would be very, very unhappy with this. Even if they got the gifts they asked for,
And
there'd
why?
be tears.
Why you to
Why?
be delivered after Christmas? Because
Yeah, yeah, right. Because I think they'd expect it to be delivered a day earlier, right?
sure. So we have to think about the value decays over time. So using the CD3 score, which means cost of delay divided by duration, of course we have to think of business value and end user value, but how the value decays over time. Thinking of a proper cost of delay, okay? Cost means value, business value, money, cash, or end user value, the product market vision of the end user, and the information discovery value as well to validate our learning, our hypothesis. You know, so we have to think about urgency as well. And another ant pattern, we are sharing like ideas as a catalog, you know, of ant patterns like problems we are seeing about the third stream and suggestions, you know. So we are bringing suggestions for that. And sometimes like why they won't change, you know. So why are not they changing? Everyone wants change, but no one wants to change it. So yeah, change the slide, please, Dave.
Yeah, I
So
think as well, maybe just to add to that as well, we see this quite a bit that maybe you've measured something, but then in terms of you're trying to influence someone to make some decisions, so maybe it's senior leadership or you're trying to resource another team or things like that. So there's a change management part, and we really feel this fits in within the kind of acting part around this.
yeah, and we can't think of the change just one step. The change happens in at least these 5 steps, the ADKAR steps. So there are the first two are about the past of the change, the preparation. So the people who will change, who will be involved through the change, they must be aware about the problem or about the opportunity about the change, and they have to desire the change. And what is in that for me? What is my gain? And what's being solved for me, for myself individually. And after the changing happens, bringing knowledge to that people and ability. So the change will happen through these steps. And after, in the future, we can come back to the status quo. So we do like reinforcement actions to keep the change. So it's a pattern just to help changing features or services in our products. Dave?
Thanks, Johnson. Yeah, absolutely. There is a change management part, and we see that as being part of the third stream. So just the last anti-pattern we would offer is we're data driven. So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the Big Bang Theory, and you see Sheldon here on front of his maths whiteboard. But sometimes we see this that we share out the data, the results, our tests, our prototypes, and they perform really well. But going back to that kind of change management part and influence part, which we really see as part of acting with the data, we hear data driven, right? But what we believe is you should actually be data informed rather than data driven. What do we mean by that? You're using your data to tell a story. There's a narrative to the change that you want to enact. So whether it's to prioritize your backlog using something like cost of delay, and you're trying to influence others then to understand that. And so use your data to tell a story. And one tool we found super useful from practice is the 3-act story arc, the classic story arc of telling stories. So, if you're from Cinderella to Die Hard to any storybook or movie out there, They use these 3 acts, and we believe strongly that this is an effective tool then to help you tell stories with your data. So Act 1, your hook, this is your opportunity to increase purchase time by 25%, to increase sales. Here's some reviews. So we're building in a hook, get people interested. Act 2, we're building it up then. We're confronting a crisis. We're no longer best in class. Our competitors are winning. If we don't act now, build in a sense of urgency, we're going to lose more customers. And Act 3 is your payoff, your resolution. We've run A/B tests, and these are the results. We need a team. Okay, so that's just a simple example. But, if we just started with Act 3, the chances that we're going to get what we need are much lower. So we need to influence. This is really important. So telling a story with the data informed, is really important. So what does it look like in actions? We showed the Kanban board earlier. So here's how we see it might play out. So this could be your team's Kanban board. Your first stream, they're doing discovery. Your second stream, they're doing delivering, they're shipping. And your third stream, they're measuring, they're learning, and they're acting, right? So we really want to see these steps in play for, all of your problems, your epics, and going through that measure, learn, act, and feeding it back through the other 2 feedback loops. And again, just to emphasize, we don't see this as something new, something to replace something you're doing already. We believe that it's a third wave. It's a missing link. Very importantly, the first 2 waves, the first 2 streams have brought us so far, back since 1995. And there's lots of other people talking about this idea of becoming more outcome driven. We want to try and make it as concrete as possible. So the third stream really is our contribution to the community. And myself and Jonathan, we're big fans of all these people, all these books, and we want to help contribute to that community, right? And again, it's about closing the loop. We believe that there's a loop there that's open, and there's maybe some concrete guidance that's missing there at the moment. So to help close that loop, we believe this is where the third stream comes in. Okay, and yeah, we're very excited. We've been working on these ideas for the past year or so, and we've been writing a book, really excited, called The Third Stream. And, we see this very much as an experiment as well. So what we would love to do is to put it into action, to get feedback from you guys. So to download chapter 1 for free, it's available at thethirdstreambook.com. So download chapter 1. And if you download chapter 1, we will be able to share the rest of the book for free with you as well, with all the patterns and many more that we've talked with you about today.
So help us with our experiment. We are bringing a Fitness for Purpose score form to ask you what's your goal with this talk. So use the QR code or that link, please, and help with our experiment about the third stream talk, please. And help us to connect and contribute on Twitter or LinkedIn. And yeah, that's all. Go to our website, thethirdstreambook.com. And thank you for everyone. Bring your questions, your ideas, and contribute, please. This is our idea. We are not creating anything here. This is all about the outcomes over output movement. We are calling a wave. We are calling it the third stream. But it's new, it's something from the Agile community. It's not just from us.
Yeah, absolutely. So be it through the third stream, the book, and through the website as well. We're looking to build a pattern library as well through that website that anyone can access. So we'd love to hear from you as well. Contact us through the website, with any patterns that you'd like to share with us as well. And with that, we're going to open up for questions.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jonathan. That was excellent. We have some really good questions in from the audience. First up is, what do you think is the difference? The difference is between development and delivery. What characteristics are in the former that aren't in the latter, or where is the emphasis different? We'll start with David. You're on mute, David.
Sorry about that.
No.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for the great question as well. So, yeah, just in terms of difference between development and delivery, I know Scrum talks quite a bit about this in terms of the development team. I think in the last update to the Scrum guide, it actually kind of emphasized that terminology around the Scrum team, and really we see, I suppose, a key difference in terms of when you're developing a product. You're also involved in discovery activities as well. So you're doing discovery and delivery. I know Jeff Patton talks a bit about things like dual track agile. And in terms of bringing designers and content writers and so on into the mix. So really, I suppose that would be a distinction I would make. That development teams should be doing discovery and delivery on a continuous basis. In terms of characteristics in the former that aren't in the latter, again, I think in terms of like talking to users, talking to customers on a weekly basis, in terms of doing that on a really continuous basis, you might not discuss that or emphasize that as much if you're just talking in terms of delivery. So that's where I would see the difference. But might hand over to Jonathan. Any thoughts yourself?
Yeah, that's that our idea that we must ship the development team, the developers left and right, which means not just to caring about shipping features, but to be a real developers, not the deliverers. So so we can engage the team, the developers, to bring innovation as well.
Cool. Good question. Great answers. Thank you both. We have another one. Of the patterns you mentioned, is there one you would recommend starting with?
Do you want to take that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. It depends on the biggest problem from the team, from the organization. But I believe one very common is about the data, being data driven, not information driven or acknowledgement driven. Numbers are just numbers. We need information. That was the pattern about stories David told us today. David?
Yeah, and absolutely. Like it definitely, classic coach answer really depends. Yeah, it depends where you are in your journey. Maybe just one other I call out, and it was actually something Tim Herbig talked quite a bit. I think the first pattern we call it around leading versus lagging indicators, because that sometimes that's a challenge that in terms of things like our key results, there's a risk of the indicators becoming a bit laggy, and having that long feedback loop, we need to wait 3 months in order to get feedback. So really to try and connect in leading indicators and like we talked about there, to time box those, ideally to 1 or 2 weeks, and to be able to see those trends, because if you can't see the trends, it just becomes very difficult, and you might fall into the trap of kind of zombie OKR. So the leading and lagging is one I would call it.
Yeah, and that are just few patterns we are bringing. There are much more, and this is something we want from you, audience, like who is listening to us and asking questions, to bring to us more examples from yourselves. Like this is just one idea we are sharing. The patterns, we believe there are many, many, many. We can't list here. We brought just few ones. And we just want to contribute with this vision about the third stream, this idea.
Mm-hmm. Which is great, Jonathan, and leads us nice to the next question, which is when and where might you use the Kanban board example you showed with the third stream visualized?
Yeah, I can try answer this one. And again, great question. Yeah, I mean, I think myself and Jonathan were both big fans of Kanban, and particularly around Klaus Leopold's work around flight levels.
visualizing kind of at the program and portfolio level, and kind of seeing it a level up from the teams in particular. Maybe your program level boards to visualize what happens after done or after shipped, and really to if you're using kind of a walk the board style stand up for that kind of flight level stand up, it means you're always starting with those kind of measure, learn, act in terms of like how are we trending, what outcomes have we achieved since last week. Goes back to your leading indicators as well. If if you're meeting at that board once a week, it probably means that you can see the trends once a week as well. So I definitely recommend, if you haven't come across Flight Levels from Klaus Leopold, it's excellent around thinking about that kind of end-to-end flow of value.
It is indeed, yeah. Excellent, Dave. And then, Jonathan, any tips or tricks to help teams become more data informed?
Yeah, think of data is just numbers. We can't do anything with that. We need information and knowledge from data to make better decisions and learning. That are the 3 steps from the third stream. To act, we need to learn about something, and to learn, we need data. So that 3 steps, they connect with each other very well. It's just a kind of framework to think about it. So use the 3 steps to think about it, like how we can become more data informed.
Super.
Yeah,
Thanks. Sorry, go, Dave.
Oh yeah, the
David,
only
yeah.
one I'd add there is and this is something I picked up recently from Barry O'Reilly, and he talks about if you've got a dashboard, let's say for example, and you've got outputs on your dashboard, pick one outcome metric and include that on your dashboard for everyone to see. Just pick one, and start to have discussions around that one. So in terms of kind of hacking how we become more data informed, just start with one outcome metric.
Cool. Thanks, both. We have a couple of questions I think we get through in the last minute or so. So, Jonathan, my objective is weight loss, and my leading metric is calorie intake, and my lagging is weight loss, weight gain. Any tips for objective setting?
Was that real? I thought I answered just pizza.
So
David,
just have pizza.
Yeah, just have pizza. Pizza is not output. Pizza is the input. And the outcome is yeah, nice one. Humor is very welcome for us, right, David?
Yeah, absolutely. But don't have Hawaiian pizzas. They're not real pizzas. So yeah.
And then there's a question for Dave. Dave, is it true that you were first attracted to agility because we could party every couple of weeks?
Yeah, that was the leading indicator. That's what drew me in. I didn't want to wait for the 2-year party to happen.
Yeah. I know that's true. David, Jonathan, that was excellent. Thank you very much. I enjoyed every minute of that, and hope you all did, those listening in. And thank you, and thanks for everything. And we'll see you later on, I guess. Thanks all.
Yeah, share. Are you